This video is on the triangle midsegment theorem. The triangle midsegment theorem states that if a segment connects the midpoints of two sides of a triangle, then the segment is parallel to the third side and half the length of the third side in the triangle. So what this means, if a segment connects the midpoints of two sides of a triangle, so point D here is in the exact middle of segment AB. So D is the midpoint. Point E is in the exact middle of segment AC. So it is the midpoint. These tick marks show that. This tick mark is the same as this tick mark, which shows that the segment of A to D is the exact same length as segment D to B, because they both have one tick mark. Same thing happens on segment A to C. We have two tick marks from A to E, which means it is the exact same length of segment EC, or from E to C. So that means that it's the midpoint because it's in the exact middle. The segment DE is what's connecting those two midpoints. This segment is parallel to the third side down here. These two segments will never touch each other. So it's talking about the segment that we are able to create will be parallel to the third side of the actual triangle that we haven't talked about yet. This also states that this segment that we're able to create is going to be half of the size of the actual length of the triangle. So in the diagram, we can say that segment DE is equal to the half of the length of BC. So if we use this in an example, it wants us to find the length of SR. Since S is directly in the middle of EF, segment EF, because we have a tick mark, one tick mark on ES, and one tick mark on segment SF, means that they are the same. But notice that there are two tick marks, so not the same, on ER and RD. That means that R is the exact middle. So SR would be considered your midsegment. SR is your midsegment. DE was the midsegment in the diagram. So we could state that SR would be the same thing as DE. So SR has to be equal to half of the length of that third side that we haven't even talked about yet, which would be FD. And FD, notice, has no tick marks on it. Neither did BC. Okay, so we can state that it would be half the length of whatever FD is. And I'll put parentheses around that. Now we also know that from the theorem, states that segment SR and segment FD will be parallel. That's what these little triangles, little symbols mean in here. You might also see it as a little arrow inside the line showing that they're parallel. It just means that these lines will never touch. If I were to continue these lines, they will never touch. So now that we have the formula, we can actually plug in or substitute the expression that represents that line. So SR is actually represented by the expression 2x minus 14. So we can substitute that in. 2x minus 14, which was the SR, is equal to 1/2 of the length of FD, which FD is the length of x plus 2. Now we have an equation and we can solve for x. Most people will want to try and distribute this 1/2 into the x plus 2. But if we do that, we'll end up with a 1/2 x. So to eliminate that, we could actually go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal of 1/2 on both sides, which will get rid of the fraction. So let's do that. Let's multiply the entire equation, so everything. So that means I'm going to put parentheses on the left to group that together. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2/1, or just 2. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. Because now the 1/2 times the 2 will be able to divide to 1. On the left-hand side, when we distribute that, that'll become 2 times 2x, which is 4x. and 2 times negative 14, which is negative 28, will now equal to 1 times x plus 2, which is just x plus 2. Now we have no fractions and no parentheses. So now we can solve for x. To solve for x, we want to get all the x's on one side. I have 4 x's here and 1 x here. I want to subtract the 1x from both sides. Since I moved my x's from the right side to the left, I want to get the stuff on the left to the right. That means I'm going to actually add the 28 to both sides to move it to the right. So I have 4x minus x, which gives us 3x. Negative 28 plus 28 is 0, equals x minus x is 0. 2 plus 28 is 30. Now I want to divide by 3 to get x by itself, and we get x is equal to 10. Now I'm not going to circle this because my answer is not just saying x is 10. The question said find SR. So I want to find the length of SR. To find the length of SR, I will plug my x value into the expression and find the length. So we know that SR is equal to 2x minus 14. So we plug in that 10 where the x is. So 2 times 10 minus 14. 2 times 10 is 20 minus 14. So therefore, the length of SR is equal to 6 units. Now, let's check to make sure that the SR is half of the length of FD. If I were to plug 10 in for FD, I would get 10 plus 2. This would be 12. So we could say that if this is 6, this is 12, and 6 is half of 12. That means that we did our math correctly.